what we call Student Enhancement Program. This is organized by the Faculty of Social Sciences. And I believe your organization will have your own thing later on. But this is something that we would want to initiate from the Faculty of Social Science side. And today, we are going to have Taufiq Rahman. He is the chief editor of the Jakarta Post, the most prominent English newspaper in Southeast Asia, I would say. A good friend of mine, and we studied together in DeKalb in Illinois. And from him, he intoxicated me with vinyl, turntable. So because of him, then I became the collector of vinyl albums of rock and roll bands. And I remember when we were students there, maybe we spent more times in record store than in the library. You should not copy us. you should spend most of your time in the library or in with your work. So we went. He went all over the places in the United States. I follow as much as I can, but I'm not as crazy as Taufiq is. But he wrote, I think, he's one of the most English language writer, I think, in Indonesia right now. He could write various spectrum from music, political issues, economy, and whatnot. And we are very happy that Taufiq is here today, because I heard from Magello that Magello was the one who wrote that piece. Yeah. And then he told me that some of his fellow students actually asked how could they write for the Jakarta Post, because some of them actually did send articles, but it was turned down, or no news at all from the editors. So today, why not? We are hearing directly from Taufiq, from the chief editor, on how to write a good essays or good opinion articles from the perspective of the media. Sometimes we think that we write good piece, but from the media point of view, it's not it's not relevant to the issue of the day, and so on and so forth. So Taufiq will spend some time to explain and to discuss with you how to write a good piece and how the media actually works. And then I hope that it will give you some perspective, because aside from the academic papers that you have to write, I believe you will be engaging with social issues when you're going back to your country, right? And then we are hoping that you would become, writers, community leaders, and then discussing matters relevant to your social and political context in your respective country once you go back. And I hope today it's going to be some kind of initial training on how to do that. All right, without further ado, I would like to invite Taufiq.
Thank you so much, Pak Philip. Thank you also for the very generous introduction. And I think I have a vinyl copy of Sole Luna, so you can get it later. But yeah, again, I'm really humbled. I'm and very grateful to be here this afternoon. I think this is my first class in the past 8 years. My last class was with UIN, UIN Syarif Hidayatullah. This is 2011, so yeah, it's almost 9 years ago. So again, I'm really happy to be able to go back to sort of sharing the experience, and it's going to be something that is very close to me, of course, because I've been in journalism since it's forever ago. This is 2004, and I have joined the Post since the very beginning of this last decade. So a lot has happened in the country and also happened with the Jakarta Post. So I think if you, for those of you who's not really familiar with the Jakarta Post has been around for 4 decades. So this newspaper is not only, I think, the oldest existing today, the oldest in English daily as well, but this is also one of the oldest newspaper in Indonesian language or English, Indonesian or otherwise, one of the oldest in the country. And I think Pak Phillips has also been generous in recognizing the importance and the influence of the Jakarta Post. Probably now because we're the only one doing this. So I think it's, and since we're the only one writing in English, I can safely say that the Jakarta Post carries a lot of weight. What we write matters, and this matters mostly in foreign policy and also in domestic politics. Just to give you an example of this, well, and I should not take credit for this too much, but I think we did earlier this year. I think, and well, I share this story all over the place whenever I have the opportunity to tell the stories. I think earlier this year we have a visit. I'm not sure if you're all political science or international relation major, but I think earlier this year we have a, I think, yeah, a visit from a senior U.S. official. And this is, I think this is Tony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, and this is early in the administration of President Joe Biden. And they decided to just skip Indonesia. And we wrote a very scathing editorial and also commentary criticizing the US for skipping or not visiting Indonesia. Well, again, we should not take credit for the sort of change of heart that the US administration made, but I think what we wrote that day, and this is while Austin and even I think Kamala Harris also in Singapore, they toured around the region, and so somebody must have told them that, okay, you probably made a little bit of a mistake of not visiting Indonesia, or even if they don't directly read about that, they possibly get an input that, okay, probably this is a wrong thing to do, that you skip Indonesia in the first visit of Biden administration. And then I think they sort of made a course correction. I think after that, Blinken made a point of visiting Indonesia before he gets COVID. I think he finally skipped Malaysia in the tour. So that's just an illustration that what we write matter. And I think the last example from your colleague from the Philippines, I think his articles, not only that this is one of the most read pieces on that day, because this is about the election in the Philippines. I can see from the traffic that it's got a huge spike. But I think personally for the writer, I heard from Pak Philip that he's got a lot of, I think, visceral comments from his fellow Filipinos, because this is really not, I don't want to say this is a controversial subject, but this, I think the election in the Philippines last month was really not contested, but this is really a divisive issue in the Philippines. And I heard that you have a lot of comments on social media as well. So this sort of goes to shows that what we write matters, at least in the region, if not internationally. And being the only English daily newspaper, meaning that the Jakarta Post is accessible to almost everyone in the world, anyone in the English-speaking countries, or those who are probably in the think tank community, in the foreign policy community, and sort of everyone who paid close attention to Indonesia. So that's sort of the background about the Jakarta Post. I think I have a slide, and this is mostly introduction about. I don't know if some of you is media or political science major, but probably you're not too aware of how the media landscape today, especially in Indonesia and also in the world. So probably this is some of introduction about the Jakarta Post before we go into detail on how you can sort of write an opinion or commentary about subject that is most convenient or some subject that is close to you, and how to execute that and sort of made it available for us at the Post to publish those articles. So next slide, please. This is just a cover. Yeah, so this is sort of an introduction in media in general. But if you're paying attention today, that the media industry or the media landscape is not what it is like 20 or 30 years ago, and this is simply because of the rise of the big tech, Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitter, and now it's TikTok. And now more and more people get their news, their information from TikTok, from social media. And I think in the case of the Philippines, I think a lot of, at least preliminary investigation shows that there are a lot of misinformation coming from this social media platform. And I have seen a lot, some of this video about, like trying to whitewash Marcos' legacy. And these are the things that now mostly spread and distributed through social media, and the latest being TikTok, because TikTok is 16-second video. I don't know if you're aware of it, but 16-second video, which makes it very difficult to verify. So basically now we have a lot of noise, and so because of there's a lot of noise, a lot of misinformation, we tend to have less focus on reality. I think yesterday there's a massive shooting in Texas, and there's a lot of outrage. There's a lot of information on both conventional and social media. And I think as much as the US politicians don't want this to sort of go out of the news cycle, but I think in the next 2 or 3 days, this will be replaced by any outrage, or I don't know, God forbid, there's another shooting in America or some other big news coming from around the world. So now with social media, there's a lot of noise, misinformation, but at the same time, that sort of distracts you from some of the key issues that you should focus your attention to. Poverty, the war in Ukraine, social imbalance. So there's a lot of issue that's sort of going out of the news cycle very quickly, and you only have noise and distraction. You have no focus anymore. And of course, I mentioned earlier about hoaxes and disinformation. This is not exclusive to the Philippines. This is in our problem in Indonesia. This is the problem in the US. This is mostly, you can see this during the Trump election in 2016, Russian bots, a lot of misinformation, even in 2014 election in Indonesia. So you have a lot of hoaxes and misinformation or disinformation. But because there's a lot of distraction out there with fake news, misinformation, people who still care about sort of the world affairs, people who still care about social justice, people who still care about gender equality, which I believe is now really gaining steam among younger population, Gen Z, probably later generation of millennial generation. Now, people who still care about the state of the reality, the state of global politics, the states of the social justice in all over the world, they tend to want to get views and opinions, because you can get anything, information, news, details of some events anywhere else in the world. Just open social media and you've got all the information on social media. But those, I should say, inundation of information sometimes overwhelm people, so that they at times could not make any rational decision based on that information. And this is also explained why people sort of gravitates toward believing hoaxes and misinformation, because all of this information comes without any context. The war in Russia, the war in Ukraine, or the shooting in Texas, or the human rights violation in Papua. you have all the information available online today. As we speak right now, a lot of information's coming on social media. Just check out your Twitter timeline. You will have any information that you want from anywhere else in the world. The algorithm will serve you well. You will get any information from social media. But sometimes people don't have anything to sort of digest those information. So if you really care about facts, about data, about information, now you need more people telling you what does facts, what does data, what does this information means to you. So now I think it is safe to say that the Jakarta Post is no longer, well, we still publish news, but I'm trying to sort of steer the Jakarta Post more towards giving sort of explainer and context to whatever that is happening today. Because as a newspaper, and this is, we still have paper, physical newspaper. If we publish the story for tomorrow's paper, then it's going to be old story tomorrow. So now we're trying to sort of steer the conversation away from just publishing news, this is in the newsroom, towards giving more opinion and commentary and context, insight, or explainer, because I think more people now need those kind of information rather than breaking news, because it's everywhere right now. So, and now the Jakarta Post is sort of aiming towards giving those, even if we publish news, this comes with a context and explainer of what does the news or the data or the information actually means. So yeah, and we can see this from our traffic, that whatever we publish in the commentary section, editorial section, and opinion section, it's got the most traffic, especially online, because it's a bit difficult to measure the traffic or the readership on paper, because this is based on how many prints we have. So yeah, and I think with all the noises, the hoaxes and misinformation, I can safely say, and this is simply from the fact that now New York Times, Washington Post, and Financial Times is the biggest, or if not some of the biggest legacy publication in the world. These are also, well, maybe not New York Times, but Financial Times is still the most trusted source of information. I want to stay away from New York Times and Washington Post as being the most reliable news source of information, because people on the right side of the aisle in the US, of course, they're not going to see New York Times and the Washington Post as sort of a reliable source of information. But I think New York Times has been a success in how a legacy publication managed to survive, not only survive, but thrive in this digital era. Not only that New York Times is the biggest newspaper in the world today, they are also the most subscribed newspaper in the world, and this is online subscription. It shows that people still want to get news that is reliable and that is properly fact-checked, and these are done by professional journalists. And in the case of New York Times, they have hundreds, if not thousands, reliable journalists and writers around the world. So yeah, so this is, and Jakarta Post is sort of consider itself as a legacy media. We, as I mentioned earlier, we have been around for almost 4 decades, and the fact that we're still here, meaning that there's still a shred of, well, a shred of credibility that we still have. And as I told you earlier about the opinion piece on the US trip to Indonesia, that's a sort of a tip the scale a little bit in trying to influence the outcome of policies, for instance. So yeah, probably 2 or 3 years ago, I may have pessimism on how the future of legacy media is, because with the rise of social media and also the big tech, financially, economically, mainstream media is struggling. But now we're seeing trend where people trying to sort of gravitate back towards mainstream media. They're willing to subscribe to legacy publication like ourselves. I don't have the figure right now, but I think last year we have an increase in the number of digital subscribers on our online platform, the JakartaPost.com. So yeah, people still trust legacy publication. Next. So this is sort of a bit too technical, but this is some of the option that we have right now. And I think I'm just going to focus on the first part of this, is that now all media companies in the world tend to have sort of a paywall. We want people to pay for the news because journalism needs a lot of money, and credible journalism, you need to pay those things. So yeah, now probably you still can get news or information free, but I think in the future you will have to pay for news that you will get from mostly online publication. The Jakarta Post itself, next year, 2023, we're going to be fully behind paywall. So everything that we publish will be put behind paywall. So yeah, we're trying to sort of get money from how it should have been properly distributed a long time ago, before Google steal our lunch money. So yeah, those are sort of the things that we want to go in the future. And probably I just want to focus also on the last part of this slide here, is that I don't know if you're aware of this, but now if you pay attention to local media, and this is especially in Indonesia, if you pay attention to local media, there's this thing, and this is also all over the world. You have this thing called clickbait journalism. News information that is maybe not relevant to you, not really interesting. This is celebrities getting married or celebrities getting divorced. But those things are having a lot of conversation on social media, and mainstream media, they tend to follow whatever that is out there on social media. And most of the time, I think this is 80% of the time, they decided to follow what people want on on social media. Most of conversation on social media, some of these media companies decided to make it news when in fact it's probably not relevant to you. So, and these are mostly what sort of the media is doing right now, but the Jakarta Post is trying to sort of steer clear from doing that. We're trying to set our own agenda, and in the case of Jakarta Post, our focus has been foreign policy, and this is Indonesian foreign policy in the region and in the world, and also sort of domestic politics. And this, I think, will sort of focus and I think Pak Philip also a big supporter of this, is that we're focusing on the state of the Indonesian democracy. I think in 2016, the Washington Post has a tagline, and this is during Trump administration. They have a tagline of, I think, democracy dies in darkness. This is really a dark time for American democracy. And I think not that we're trying to copy what the Washington Post has done, but I think in the past 2 decades, no, not 2 decades, but in the past 1 decade, there's been a steady decline of the quality of Indonesian democracy. And I think around 5 years ago, we at the Jakarta Post decided to sort of pay our close attention to the state and the quality of Indonesian democracy. And I think the last attempt to sort of, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's this attempt to extend the presidential term limit of the current president. And this is sort of, we see that this is possibly a red light for our democracy. And we're trying to sort of bring that as our own agenda, and we're trying to sort of fight for the quality of Indonesian democracy. So yeah, these are the options that we have in the mainstream media. Next, I'm not sure what's next. I think, yeah, this is I mentioned earlier about why the Jakarta Post matter, because yeah, we're the only one, we're writing in English, so most people in the world knows what we're writing. But I think I want to focus on the second second last and the last part. And I think Kompas or Tempo, they also do this, but in the case of the Jakarta Post, and this is probably will be relevant to all of you, is that the Jakarta Post has opened itself as a platform for ideas to be debated. Some of the big ideas about the how to protect Indonesian democracy, and this probably controversial to some of Indonesian readers or some of our Indonesian fellow, is that the Jakarta Post has been really, I should say, very liberal in that we are promoting the rights of minority groups in the country, not only religious minority, but also the sexual orientation, ethnicity. So, and this is sort of under the umbrella of sort of protection of human rights in the country, and we have been doing this in the past 3 decades. This is even while the new order government is still in power, which is very difficult to do because you have a lot of censorship and repression. So protection of human rights and promotion of human rights, and particularly the rights of minority groups, and in the case of Indonesia, LGBT rights, is still something that is really difficult to even talk about. And Jakarta Post has clearly stated that this is something that we need to do in the Jakarta Post. And we constantly use the platform to debate these issues. And I think now we've got the reputation as sort of, okay, this is a really liberal newspaper that promotes the rights of even some of the most minority groups in the country. And we have, I think there are a number of times when some of the conservative groups in the society, they come to us, they stage a protest on what we have written in our news and in our commentary or opinion section, because these are some of the ideas that probably not really in their interest, or this is a value that probably not they are not promoting. So this is sort of the expression of that the Jakarta Post has opened itself to be the platform for all ideas to be debated. So this is where it will be very relevant to all of you. And also on the last part, I have mentioned earlier about the fact that, okay, since we are the only English daily in the country, so this is sort of being read by some of the most influential people in the country, but also some of the most influential people who probably have political, business, cultural connection to Indonesia. So this is sort of the, well, I have taken too much time for sort of introduction, but this is sort of the introduction of the Jakarta Post and why what we write, or if you're willing to do this, you're going to write for the Jakarta Post, why what you will write matters. And I think from the examples of our colleague from the Philippines, what we publish on the Jakarta Post matters. It generates debates. Sometimes it's not really a healthy response, but yeah, this is a very important platform that we need to keep doing right now and in the future. Probably I need to stop. Probably if you have any question, you can just fire away before I continue on sort of the technical side of how to write an opinion piece for the Jakarta Post. Please, if you have any questions.
All right, right now, yes, Saima, please introduce yourself, because Taufiq certainly would want to know where you are coming from.
Well, hello, glad to meet you. Well, I am Saima from Nepal.
Nepal, okay.
Yes, and I am a student of political science here. So my question is, as you said that the Jakarta Post is the world's window to Indonesia and vice versa, and it also supports all the ideas that could be debatable. So, for example, when the election was going on in Philippines, at the same time, election was going on in Nepal also. But as you know, the election in Nepal would not be that attractive to the Indonesian people to be, to send the or to write any article on it. Well, but I wrote an article. I wrote a journal about that election that was going on for the Nepali newspaper. So my question is, what is the scale or what is the limit apply or to write for the Jakarta Post. For example, if I am writing about the genocide, Muslim genocide in Nepal, because if you see Nepal news is not very like it is not on the international level. It is not getting that views. And yeah, so and there is genocide, Muslim genocide in Nepal because Muslims are in minority. So on the one hand, where the Muslim genocide of India is on the surface, at the same time, the situation of Nepal is not recognized. So what if I use this platform and try to bring that stories there? So
Yeah.
Is it acceptable or?
Sure, yeah. Can I answer now? Okay,
Yeah.
So I think, I have to be, and we at the Jakarta Post has to be realistic that as an Indonesian newspaper, and for those of you who is from political science major, we know that Indonesia is sort of a middle power. So, and so the Jakarta Post is sort of a reflection of our status in the region. I have to admit that for the Jakarta Post, I think the primary coverage or our primary coverage is Asia, and if we can sort of narrow it down, these are mostly Southeast Asian affair. And now with the US and China sort of trying to gain influence in the region, and you also have Australia trying to sort of play around with the situation. So I have to admit that our focus is mostly regional, and this is sort of Southeast Asia, and when it comes to its relation with China and the US. So sort of the geopolitical tension that is going on in the region, and we're trying to focus on how Indonesia play its part in those equations. When it comes to regions outside of our vicinity, I think I can safely to say India is also, this is also one of the key priority. And I think Pakistan, for a reason that probably we're not too sure why, any news that comes or any opinion piece that comes from India or about India and Pakistan always get a lot of traffic on our website. So probably if you talk about something political about Nepal, probably it's going to get traction. But I think the biggest traction that we can expect if you can write or speak or tell us stories about Muslim genocide, for instance, because not only that this will draw interest, but this is also consistent with what the Jakarta Post is sort of trying to promote human rights or the human rights abuse. Probably we will have problem if we continue write about the human rights in Xinjiang, because that's complication in that. But yeah, we have been consistent in writing about the human rights violation in Papua, which is the same with any cases of human rights violation in region that is trying to separate from major countries they are part of. So yeah, these human rights violation is one of the key issues that if you you want to write about it as an opinion piece, of course. But as a news piece, sadly to say, we have to rely on the Western media to write about that, because we don't have correspondents, we don't have writers from Nepal or from India now, and we have to rely on Reuters, AFP. But these are mostly for news or information about day-to-day development. If you have shootings or you have allegation of human rights violation or possibly genocide, but these are mostly news item coming from the Western sort of Western media, AFP, Reuters. But for commentary, yes, we need people from the region to write about it, and we have a network of writers all around Asia. We are part of the so-called ANN, Asian News Network. These are major media companies from, I think, 16 or 17 countries in Asia. A lot of from India, from Pakistan, and other countries in Asia. So yeah, so that's sort of how you could get attention if you use Jakarta Post platform to do that.
All right. Anyone else? Okay. very, very quick, yeah, because then we will have time for the technical side of it. Sabur first and Ali. And then at the back, is there anyone? No? All right, Sabur first. Please use the microphone.
Oh, Afghanistan.
Uh, Thank you. My name is Sabur. I'm from Afghanistan, a student of political science. One thing I saw very common in nowadays is social media. Most of people, you just said that social media is the source of news, but it's very common to manipulate the data. There's lots of conspiracy going on, and especially in Afghanistan, which is in security dilemma, like, in countries like Afghanistan, which is in security dilemma, Pakistan, Iran, nowadays, Ukraine. So what is the initial motivation for the conspiracy of data? Thank you.
I don't know if I can answer that, but so basically your question is about the conspiracy of data. I cannot really tell you about that, but I'm just going to speak simply from the media perspective on this, because, well, I have to say that what we write on our platform is, well, I have to say that most of information about Afghanistan, for us, this comes mostly from the Western media, simply because we don't have eyes and foot on the ground. We don't have reporters in Afghanistan. And also, if we happen to travel to Afghanistan, these are mostly on the invitation of the foreign ministry, Indonesian foreign ministry, or the Afghanistan foreign ministry. And this is really during the sort of normal times. So I have to say that most of our coverage on Afghanistan is really driven by the sort of how the Western media covers Afghanistan. And I can tell you an example of how this Western media perspective really, I don't want to say cloud our judgment, but whatever news regarding the women's rights. And I think the last big information that we publish on our platform is that some of the TV newscaster, the women TV newscaster, they're trying to fight this is the head covering ban. Of course, these are things that the Western media is really trying to focus themselves on. But since we have no no reporters on the ground, we have to publish those information. Otherwise, we're not going to publish anything on Afghanistan. I believe there are things, more important things. Well, those are important as well, but there's a lot of economic story, a lot of education story, and governance story from Afghanistan. But since we have no one on the ground, so yeah, probably from the media perspective, that's what I can say to answer your question to the best of my knowledge. And again, in the case of Afghanistan, I'm not going to talk about how the social media portray Afghanistan, but this is sort of how the mainstream media in Indonesia even, and this is not exclusive to us, this is also local newspaper who writes in Bahasa Indonesia, they use the Western perspective to do that because they have no one on the ground doing that.
All right, Ali.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Ali from Yemen. My question is, to what extent do you, as a Jakarta Post, respond to Jakarta Post account in social media? Because a few weeks I have experience with how Jakarta Post in Instagram, Jakarta Post photo, presented the Palestine issue. Yeah. So I say a lot of negative comments toward Jakarta because it just image that Jewish is or Israel as a victim, not Palestine. So you can say the comments.
Okay, well, again, this is a problem of that, and this is similar to what we're doing with Afghanistan issue. I have to say, because whatever we publish on our platform from Palestine, and this is about any issues in the Middle East, and these are mostly on Palestinian and Israeli conflict. We're using Western sources because we don't have reporters and writers on the ground. But, and I think this is sort of our ideological lenses at the Post, that we know that, well, we know that Israel is the occupier, and this is also consistent with the Indonesian government line of foreign policy when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So whatever we publish through the Western media, we take them with a grain of salt, and if possible, we're trying to sort of moderate the Western perspective on that issue. I think on the issue of the shooting of Shireen Abu Akleh, from the beginning, and this is even in the early minutes of the shooting, we know exactly the case that this is indiscriminate shooting from the Israeli troops towards Palestinian citizen, and it happens to be a journalist. So whatever we publish on our platform is going to just focus on the asymmetry of force between Israeli and the Palestinian people. And I think in our follow-up coverage on that, we sort of amplify the reporting that this is really really inhumane treatment. And I think 3 days later we have an editorial with a heading. I think I proposed the heading because I think the original heading was shameless Israel. And then I proposed a correction to that to make it so the heading become senseless Israel, because at this point I think what the Israeli government has done has gone beyond shame, because what they have done with Shireen, it's beyond comprehension. So we're trying to focus on the sort of the excessive treatment, and we're trying to focus on getting the actual picture there. If we cannot get that through the news reporting, and then this is going to be relayed through our commentary and our editorial section. So yeah.
All right. Tough questions already. And I think it's good because then we are coming from 20 countries.
Okay.
I forgot to mention. And then, of course, the variety of views that would be very helpful as well to Jakarta Post and to Indonesia. If you all write to the Jakarta Post, and hopefully it will get published if it meets the standards, of course. Right. Please continue, Pak. Taufiq.
That's one.
Oh, another one.
Can we keep it?
Hello, my name is Moin
Very short. All right.
and I am from India. I want to ask few questions. What is the role of media in stopping the spread of hatred through social media? Why? Because I can point out 3 instances. One is 1 year, 2 years back, there was a spread of people who are doing kidnap of young children. So this was the misinformation. Because of this misinformation, more than 10 people, more than 10 youngsters, they were killed. They were just tourists. How media, either it is print media or mass media, whatever kind of media it is, how it can cross-check, how it can lead to cross-check, and it can stop this spread of this misinformation. And the second question is, apart this social media is being used for the spread of hatred against a particular community, against particular race, ethnicity, either during election or based on particular propaganda, in order to spread propaganda. See, in India, there is alt news. In India, there is alt news. What it do? It check for what kind of information is being spread. Either it is in Twitter, Facebook, Insta, wherever it is. What it will do? It will check this information, and it will just tell that is it fake, or it is forged, or it is correct or not. It will tell like this. Why? Because normal person, normal citizen, either he is an Indian, Pakistani, whatever, he will not have a particular time to check that I got a particular forward about a particular instance. Some persons killed some people. See, I will not have, not only me, no one will have particular time to cross-check this information, it is correct or wrong. If we receive this kind of information from more than 20, 30 people, what we will think? That this is correct. So what is the role of media to stop this information?
I think
Thank you.
I think your first question refers to this the problem. This is a the kidnapping of kids, and the information was circulated through WhatsApp, right, in India. This is a big news a couple of years ago. But I think and that goes to shows the risk posed by social media. And this is, we're talking about platform like WhatsApp, Facebook, well, Twitter. We in sort of the mainstream media, we of course, our first priority and our first order of the day is to verify if those information is correct, is factually consistent with all the facts that we have on the ground. And I think now and basically this is what the mainstream media is doing right now. Well, mainstream media who's still willing to do this, because we have a lot of, you know, I mentioned earlier about media who's sort of trying to only focus on clickbait story. But a reputable newspaper like ourselves, we based our operation on the assumption that we will do proper journalism. And what I mean by proper journalism is that whatever we have information or claims of information, we always verify those information. And how, for instance, we verify information from social media. There's a lot of technology in our newsroom that we can use to verify any claims of stories from the ground. We have a lot of websites. We have, I think Facebook has a collaboration with AFP, the Wires news service from France. They have collaboration to check every stories that comes through their platform to see if it's a fake news or not. So I think you can rest assured that if you read the mainstream media, whatever they publish has been checked and rechecked through a process of verification, because that's what proper journalism means. That I cannot say for social media or information distributed by WhatsApp or Facebook. But if this is published by mainstream media like ourselves, that must have gone through proper verification and fact checking, and you can rely on that. And your second question is on, what is this? What the media will do, right? Yeah,
How it will stop this?
Yeah, I think again, this is the first function of the established or mainstream media, is sort of to fact check some of this information. For instance, I think 2 hours ago we have WhatsApp information about Pak Shafi'i Ma'arif passing. Those kind of information, and this is not about Pak Shafi'i, rest in peace, but this is the kind of information that we have to check and verify before we decided to publish on our platform. That because once we run a story, Muslim scholar, plurality activist Shafi'i Ma'arif passed away, that will carry a lot of weight, because this is obituary story. If it turns out that this is not true, that will be consequences. So the first order of the day, once we have that, I have the information from WhatsApp distributed by friends, but the first order that I give to my reporter is that, can you please check with the family or someone who can confirm if Pak Shafi'i is indeed has passed away, because we have to have that confirmation before we publish the story. So yeah, if this is published on our platform, this is 99% correct, because we have a process of verification.
All right, let's hold your questions, because we are going to have Pak Taufiq tell us stories about how to actually do this, to do an opinion articles.
Okay, next slide, please. So, satu lagi. Oh no, sebelumnya. This one. So yeah, this is sort of, if you want to write for us at the Jakarta Post, and if you want your articles or your opinion to get impacts or to get traction, and again, the piece on the Filipinos election it's got a lot of traction. It's got a lot of reads, clicks, and comment. Is because it's very timely. So whatever you write for a daily newspaper like us, because we publish daily and we're still talking about news, but as I mentioned earlier, now we sort of shift away from news and more into opinion or explainer or commentary of that news. So whatever you write, your commentary or your opinion piece will have to be something that is really timely. This is something that people are still discussing possibly in the next 2 or 3 days after the news broke or the news breaks today. Because if you're talking about something from 2 months ago or from 3 months ago or out of the blue, you're writing about the assassination, well, this is some historical example of it, but if out of the blue you're writing about the student riot from 1974, or out of the blue, probably if you're a history major, you have the temptation to sort of write about the not assassination, but the arrest of President Sukarno from 1965, or some local development in Nepal 10 years ago. People will probably not too interested in reading about it because that's already consigned to history. And people will probably read something that is more current. So if you read the New York Times today, for instance, or the Washington Post, you will have a lot of information, news, commentary about the Texas shooting, for instance. And again, American will debate about gun control or background checks or the possibility of, I don't know, banning assault rifle altogether. So simply because there's a school shooting in Texas and people are still very angry with that. So in the next 2 or 3 days, you're going to have a lot of people writing about those issues in mainstream media in the US. In Indonesia, possibly this is, I don't know, I haven't followed the news in the past 2 days, but possibly still, what, the coalition? Yeah, or probably the war in Ukraine, that's still relevant to us. Or in the case of Nepal, India, I've been closely watching the Indian government's decision to sort of control the export of wheat, for instance. We also have problems in Indonesia recently about the export ban for palm oil. So if you're a political science major, probably you can start asking questions about, oh, possibly this is the rise of protectionism. Or if you focus your attention in the war in Ukraine, possibly you can say something about the European response to this, or the Indian response to this, or the Chinese response to this. But the point is that you need to write something that is current, because we're daily newspaper after all. So if you have something to say, even if this is some grand idea about nationalism, for instance, or some big policy proposal on the rise of sort of protectionism in Asia, and this is coming from the COVID and the war in Ukraine, you can write about protectionism, but you have to have a clear example of what you're talking about. The Indian wheat ban, the Malaysia ban on palm oil, or you can write something about climate change that is also now much discussed. So yeah, you have to write something current. I have to say this, because if you write about something from 3 years ago, probably no one will read about this, because this is not discussed by people. Okay, and this is problem with a political scientist, but like Phillips or academia in general, because they tend to see things as sort of a complicated problem. For instance, the decline of Indonesian democracy, according to Pak Phillips, there is a lot of underlying factor. There's interconnection between a lot of things, the quality of political party, the regulatory aspects of this, the unhealthy state of the civil society. So for a political scientist like Phillips, reality is really a complex affairs. You have to find a connection between a lot of things. And for those kind of things, you should write for journalists. For a regular newspaper like us, you have to come up with, if possible, I don't say you have to do this, you have to come up with sort of one single underlining argument. For instance, the rise of the rising trend of protectionism in Asia, for instance. For journalists like us, we're not looking into a lot of interconnectivity between countries in Asia. For journalists like us, and probably this is not really the ideal way of explaining complex reality in the world, but I think at the end of the day, people who will read your article, they just want to see a clear, concise explanation of why things are happening as it is right now. And if I can write something about the rise of protectionism in Southeast Asia, for instance, I'm just going to blame Ukraine war, or I'm just going to blame COVID-19, for instance, because you have countries not opening their borders, so they tend to protect their own population. So probably those kind of explanations. So again, reality is very complex, but you have to find a way to sort of narrow it down and make it palatable to layman readers like us. People who read newspaper in the morning, they want a clear, concise explanation of reality that they have they face that day or yesterday or the next day. Or even if you have a very complex explanation on reality or problems that you're currently dealing with, you have to be able to say it, and this is really a technical problem, because with print publication, you have limitation in terms of space. Also, now with online publication, you have no limit at all. But I have to remind you that at the end of the day, you have to pay attention to people's attention span. I think yesterday I watched a conversation. This is between music critic and New Yorker writer from New Yorker, and they sort of discuss how to present complex ideas in less than 400 words. Because I think with the rise of social media and also with the rise of audio visual media, it's very difficult for people to sort of pay attention to writings, to articles, because they have a lot of distraction. If you read something on social media, on your smartphone, you will tend to read the first 200 words, and then you will skip to other application. Or if you're reading that on your laptop, probably you have YouTube video next to your article. So it's very difficult now to ask people to pay attention on some of the issues that you want trying to convey. So one of the tricks, and this is applicable both to print and online education, is sort of limit yourself to. I have to say that for the most part, with the Jakarta Post, it's between 900 to 1,000 words. This is really, I should say this is still really generous, because with other publication, even now, I think New Yorker, they ask their writers to do 400 words book review. And this is almost impossible, because this is a 400 book review. What are you going to write about? So with the Post, we're still kind of generous. You can write up to 1,000 words. Again, this is words, not characters. So this is still, I think this is still enough for you to convey some of the most complex ideas that you have about social reality that you want to say. And this is really important subject. Because I think these are problems with sort of people who are not specialized in, people whose day job is not writing, they tend to sort of, they want to, to show themselves off that they have vast amount of knowledge that they want to put in writing, because you want to impress people how smart you are. So you lay out some of the things that you think are important, and most of the time, and this is when I was still editing opinion pieces for the opinion desk, people mostly spend the first 500 words making explication or explanation about why what I'm going to tell you today is important. So 500 words before you get into the main topics of what you're going to say. So it's not really a good idea to sort of have 500 words explanation early in your story. So if you want to say something, just say the main idea in the first paragraph, and then the whole story or the whole article is just going to be sort of the explanation of your primary point that you want to write in your article, that you want to convey in your article. Actually, I have examples of this, but I'm just going to distribute some of the example articles to you later. But yeah, this is sort of how you should structure your story. And if you're writing for a general affairs newspaper like the Jakarta Post, you cannot just explain things. You have to offer a policy recommendation. I should not say policy recommendation, because this sounds too highfalutin, this sounds too complex or difficult. But basically, if you have explain all the problems, all your main ideas in the story, you have to come up with, so what? If you have written about the decline of constitutional democracy in Indonesia, so you have to come up with a concrete recommendation in your articles. And I believe if this is Pak Philip's article, he will probably offer something about a political party reform in Indonesia, because Pak Philip is sort of someone who focuses his attention on political party structure. But for other writers, for instance, we have a number of writers in the newsroom who sort of has a more systemic approach towards a social problem. Some of them may propose, okay, we have to have a stronger social mobilization campaign, for instance, to make people aware about the political situation in the country. So again, if you write something, you come up with problem, but you have to also come up with solution. You should offer a policy recommendation. And you can see this mostly on our editorial. Whenever we write an editorial for the Jakarta Post offer a very specific recommendation on the state of the affairs. I think the last policy recommendation, and again, probably we should not take too much credit for this, but I think 2 days before President Jokowi administration decided to lift the export ban on palm oil, we write a recommendation in our editorial that the palm oil export ban does not work, because the policy was designed to bring down the price of cooking oil, right? And after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks after the policy is in place for a number of weeks, the price of oil remains the same. So judging from that response only, this is a failed policy. And we write in those recommendations that, okay, the policy doesn't work. The government doesn't get money from export duty. And so you lose a lot of things. And the price of oil is not going down. So this is a failed policy. And then 2 days later, I think the government decided to sort of lift the ban on palm oil export. Again, we should not take credit for that, but this is just an illustration of that you should offer a specific recommendation. on your article. I think on the Philippines election, I believe this is sort of, I think the article is about that this is what is at stake between the past and the future of the Philippine democracy. So you have to offer a specific recommendation that young people should turn up in a large number to protect the quality of democracy in the Philippines, for instance, although that sort of doesn't work with the result. Okay, again, and this is why writing for newspaper is different from writing for academic journal, because in academic journal you have to be really serious and it's not a place for you to write about personal story. But with and this is more interesting to the point, and this is, I think this is Tom Friedman. I think and this has become a cliche for Tom Friedman. I think Tom Friedman, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Tom Friedman is one of the most famous writer from the for the New York Times, but also one of the most ridiculed writer of the New York Times, because he always starts, and this is before he started to realize that this is a bad habit. So some of his past articles, and he's very famous for doing this. Tom Friedman write about global politics, and he travel a lot to a lot of parts of the world, and then when he writes for the JAKARTA, when he writes for the New York Times, first paragraph he always tells a story about his conversation with cab driver. So he's trying to sort of bring his personal experience to the story. But it has become a cliche because he's doing that all the time. And I don't think that a conversation with taxi driver is sort of the barometer of how politics works in one particular country. If you come to Soekarno-Hatta and you have conversation with taxi driver there, I don't think that's a good indication of how political situation in the country actually is. So bring up your personal view or personal story. And I believe, again, the example from Philippines election is good because this is something that is very close to you and you bring up your personal experience on this. But again, avoid at all costs cab driver conversation or conversation you have with people on the street. Because, okay, this might be a good indication of how things is working in one country, but possibly that's not really the reflection of actual situation on the country. And it is best to start with your own personal story. I think now people are writing more, and this is especially for women writers, the Me Too issues, for instance. This is probably you have problems in workplace, in campus, in society in general, where you live in a society where women is not treated fully as a human being. You treat it as second-class citizen, and you have examples of that if you live in those kind of situations. So that's your own personal story that will enrich your story if you happen to write about women issues, for instance. So yeah, personal story always helps. But again, don't overdo this, and please don't use taxi driver story. The last part of this is, again, we're not writing for academic journal. Just bring the most concise sentences and paragraph. I should say that in one paragraph, ideally, you have two sentences. Again, this is a bit too technical, but this is just to show you that, okay, probably attention span of reader is still, it's getting more limited today. So you need to limit yourself in coming up with really a brief, not brief, but concise sentence that can express your ideas to the maximum. And yeah, possibly 3 sentence tops in one paragraph, if you can. And also, well, again, this is a bit too technical, but always count the number per sentences. And when it comes to the use of sentences, next, yeah. And again, this is really some of the detailed aspects of how you should write your articles. Again, as people who are in the academia or even journalists, they like big words. They tend to use jargon. They tend to use words that are currently hip or use words that are currently in circulation and mostly used by people. So at any cost, please avoid using jargons. So just speak in plain language and don't get your message too complicated with jargons, because in whatever field of study you have, you will have jargons. Because you're writing for a general audience, you're not writing for your fellow students, or you're not writing for your professor who are well versed in some of the terms that you have or you use in those close community. Because out there, there's people who probably have very little knowledge about international politics, people who have limited knowledge about the economy or economics in general. So write in a very simple language, because again, complicated language is kind of a reflection that you still have, you have problems simplifying big ideas on your mind. So trying best to sort of simplify whatever you want to say. And I believe this doesn't apply for popular writing, popular newspaper writing for the Jakarta Post. I think if you can write easy to understand paper or assignment from your professor, that will help you a lot, because well, at the end of the day, professor have also a lot of things to do other than checking on your term paper. So yeah, again, and the second point is sort of a bit technical, and this is, I think, problems with Indonesian people and speakers of Bahasa Indonesia. They tend to use passive voice instead of active voice. And even in diplomacy, even if you use English, in diplomacy, most diplomats, they use passive voice to be sort of, I don't know, avoiding responsibility or to be really careful about what they say. Mostly they're using passive voice. We don't do that in newspaper writing. We always use active voice. We have subject, we have verbs. Because, and this is especially true in English daily like us. With Indonesian language, you can still get away with a sentence that has no subject. But with English, you have to come up who killed who, because that's the first order of the day. In a criminal story, in a crime story, you have to have a clear information about at least the sequence of events. Who killed who when this guy killed or when this guy have this accident. So this is more important in opinion writing. Always come up with a clear logic of how things are organized. For instance, if you have a policy proposal, you have to be clear about who will be the target of your policy recommendation. If you want to say that the government should do this, you have to state out clearly that this policy recommendation will be applicable to the trade ministry, for instance, or in the case of, and I think this is, we write an editorial about problem in Papua, for instance. A lot of problem in Papua boils down to the absence of political leadership and political will from the central government. And for this, the most authoritative source of political clout in Jakarta is the president. So in our editorial, we are clear that the target of our recommendation is the president. Mr. President, you should do this, you should do that. And I think this also applies in the US. Like you have a lot of New York Times editorial calling for Trump in the past, or now Joe Biden to do this, increase your aid to Russia, Ukraine, for instance, or not increasing your military aid to Ukraine. So you have to be specific on subject and verbs to make it really clear whose policy recommendation is for. Okay, this is sort of a bit technical, but I want to focus first on the last part of things, is that if you're writing about some big ideas and you're debating others, please always acknowledge the opinion from the other side, because again, in a very popular setting like a daily newspaper like us, you have to acknowledge the position of others in the debate, because you're, again, as a newspaper, we're trying to present ourselves as sort of the platform for any ideas to be debated and discussed in our platform. So we have to be careful in acknowledging that there are other sides of the story, or there are other sides of the opinion. Also, this is sort of to make your argument clearer, that you want to rebut one thing or the other. So yeah, again, this is sort of the function of the media platform, as sort of the platform on which ideas are debated, engage in a conversation. So make sure to acknowledge some of the problems that you find from others, or if you think that you find an article at the Jakarta Post to be not consistent with your opinion, or you found out an article in the New York Times that is completely wrong and you want to write for us, please acknowledge that this is wrong, and you have to show how this is wrong in a very, well, I have to say in a very orderly manner, that you have to acknowledge there are other sides of the story. I want to pause on that first, and probably we can, if you have questions about some of the technical side of things, please.
All right. Yes. I think there are questions, and yes, please identify yourself, your name, and where you are from.
Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. My name is Rifa. I come from Islamic Studies. Actually, for more than 2 years, my position as Islamic content writer at NU Online, and Kumparan. It's been 2 years. My experience working on that website, I have to lay on to the background, to the personal background, and how I write, and how I give the comment, and how I argue my what position on that. It based on what his personal background. For example, NU Online has what the principle of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jamaah, and then when I want to critique the scholar from the scholar argument from this book, it's what divorce, or it's not obligated, it's refused. Yeah, so I have to go to my the perspective of ulama and that, and I want to know how the ethics and how to solve the problem in Jakarta Post. Is Jakarta Post also has the personal background on himself? For example, the personal background of Jakarta Post was come from the politics A or B, and when we write, we have to balance with not with the rule of the composition in Jakarta Post. That's the first. And second, how to because my experience in in Jakarta Post, I have sent maybe 2 articles, but it refused. Because maybe my argument is not it's not balanced, or maybe not not related with this topic. How can the Islamic file or Islamic issues can contribute or maybe can be as best references when we write another Muslim societies, or maybe another political and others. Do you get my point? Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to answer the second question first because that question comes a lot because some of the people who send us their opinion, they always ask for inputs or criticism if they are not published, because they want to know why this is not published. And most of the time, and well, I still spend time to sort of look into some of the submission, and I think I've done quite a lot editing in the past, and I see that I think the first red flag or the first problem, majority of the problem, is not about the content or the idea. It's mostly, well, I have to say, language. Because when we read through all the manuscript, however bad the English is, we sort of know the basic idea or what these people are trying to say. We sort of get the idea. But when it was written in a really bad or not really good English, it makes it very difficult for us, because whatever article that comes through us, we will edit that, because we have a standard of what kind of articles that can be published linguistically. So this is according to the minimum standard that, okay, this will pass muster and people will understand once this is published. But most of the time, for articles that we decided not to print, this is simply because the English is, it's difficult to understand and difficult to edit. Because if there's one story and it takes us 80% trimming, you only have 20% left. It's first, that's a lot of work. Second, it's probably something is lost in the process of elimination. So make sure that if you want to write for us, you have sort of, it doesn't have to be a really sophisticated English, but you have to put that in a very, I have to say, probably you can structure your articles better, because I think the last piece that I edited for the opinion page, and this is, I think this is when the opinion editor had a day off and there's no one in charge, so I have to take care of some of the things that will publish for the next day. I think I was editing a story about the role of NU in nation building. Boom. It's a fascinating subject. It's very important subject, but the article was finally published, but it took me like 3 hours to edit the story and trim down some of the irrelevant parts of the story, some of the clunky language. So it takes a long time. And for most editors, and we're talking about editor who publish for the next day edition, so they don't have a lot of time. And if you spend 3 hours for one story, that's a lot of work. So I think the first problem is language, because I think ideas, we can sort of grasp it from how the argument was structured in the story. But if the language is so disorganized, this is technical limitation, to be honest. So yeah, first, I think you need to work on the language. Just put your big ideas up front, and then start with elaboration of that, examples coming second, and then you have your conclusion at the top. I think that will do. You will have a lot of easy process of editing. So yeah, that's basically it. So, and the first question was, yeah, I think that's a bit, but I think I have mentioned earlier that we at the Post, but we have to allow the Jakarta Post to be the platform for all ideas to be discussed, to be debated. I think I don't check any opinion articles that is published daily on our newspaper, but sometimes I got a red flag from our foreigners editor. We at the Post, we employ American, We employ British citizen working to check on the language. So basically, they're not in charge of the content, but they're checking the language to see if this is good enough to be published and read by audience all over the world. But sometimes this copy editor, this foreigners, this American staff that we have, file a red flag to me that, are you sure you're going to publish this? This is too conservative for the Jakarta Post. How can you publish this? This is against any value that the Jakarta Post have been fighting for. But at the end of the day, I decided to let it go because, well, this is, at least this is not some crazy ideas about white supremacy or non-Muslim in Indonesia should be expelled. It's not that radical ideas, but this is ideas that probably not to be consistent with whatever we trying to protect in Indonesia. So the leeway for us is that then I'm going to decide probably this opinion piece should not go as the top articles on the page. So we sort of bury the articles sort of at the corner so that people not really paying attention to that, because I think with print publication, you can have that freedom because spacing matters in print publication. If you put that story on front page, that's a big deal. But if you put that sort of at the corner where with smaller font, people will not pay attention. But we have the obligation to tell all sides of the story to be published. So we don't have that ideological boundary, ideological barrier. Anyone can write opinion pieces telling their side of the argument. So yeah, but we have limitation with news story. And this is simply coming down to verification and something that we call, and you have been in the media, so you're probably aware of this, but this is the basic underpinning of the media operation is cover both sides. So you have to cover both sides of the equation. When you have people saying A, you have to get the other side saying B or something to rebut that. But this is mostly we do that for the news story because, for instance, our journalists found out that, well, this is a fictional example. I don't want to say that this has happened here, but for the construction of this campus, you have to evict 100 locals who live in the area, and they were evicted without getting any compensation. We cannot write that story unless we get confirmation from Pak Rector or anyone in charge of the physical construction of this building, people in charge of evicting people if there are any, or people who are in charge of clearing the land for this project. So we cannot write just one claim from people who try to portray themselves as sort of victims of eviction, and probably they're trying to, you know, get money from the project, for instance. We have to verify that claim. So that's sort of the ideological barrier that we have. For news item, we have to get a complete picture of anything. But with opinion article, it's a bit loose because this is opinion from your side. You just need to acknowledge that, yes, there's this argument, and I'm going to elaborate more about my side of the argument. So that's those probably the distinction between news and opinion articles.
Yeah, I think if I may jump into the discussion, I remember when the US went into Iraq, that was 2003, right? One expat in Jakarta wrote an article supporting that Bush policies. So he wrote a long piece in the Jakarta Post supporting, you know, that is a good idea, basically, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, Jakarta Post published my article, blasted that guy, you know. So we had a debate. Jakarta Post published two sides of the story. Those who are supporting the invasion and those who are against it. So that's, I think Jakarta Post has become that kind of platform for anyone to publish their stories. All right. And lastly, if I may also, I don't know, maybe Pak Taufiq has in his last slide, but one suggestion is, one last point is edit before you send the article. And not only to Jakarta Post, but for your lecturer as well. You know, sometimes you just wrote and then you just hit the send button. And then, so don't do that. Edit, you know, take times to edit, you know, so it comes a little bit cleaner to the, either to the professor or to the editor in the Jakarta Post, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we could see that you are in a hurry, right? Because it's very clear mistakes that we know that you could avoid, but you did not have, you did not take time to edit your stuff. And that's, I think, showing that for the editor in the Jakarta Post, this guy is not serious in writing this. So that's, I think, the first impression that you need to get, that at least they know you've had edited your piece before you're sending the articles to the editor. You still have more slides?
I think I have all my slides.
All right.
Yeah, and I think we're right on time. Right?
Okay.
15:30.
All right. So that's about it. If there is questions, another suggestion, if I may, because you are a group of students, the best way to learn is if you give your article to your friend to read it, because sometimes you feel you write a magnum opus, you know, and then when you show it to your friend, what are you writing about? So you know, it's a kind of a group learning, right? And then that's, I think, also the best way before you send or even your papers. You know, try to have some kind of exchange among your classmates and then your friends. That would also help. This is my real experience with Taufiq, right? Because when we studied together in the US, we set up this website. All right, it's a website about music. We write music reviews and so on. We hunted vinyl albums and so on. So we started writing about the experience of getting that album. Where did we get it? Why we bought that album, and then why it is important for us. What does it tell us, and so on. So we set up this website. He could upload his piece anytime, because I know, you know, I could not edit it, but my piece would always go through him, you know, before it got published, you know, when we did that. So I learned a lot from Taufiq to make kind of efficient sentences, especially in the op-ed, you know, and I think this is also applicable to paper writing. Sometimes I think some suggestion from Pak Taufiq was that put your main point on top, get to the point fast. I think that's also have been our suggestions to students in, at least in my class. When you wrote an article, put your question in the first sentence. Why you want to answer this question? What is the question? Put it in the beginning, and then it's the same for academic papers or for opinion piece. Do not. This is also what I feel. Sometimes we spend too much in the background, right? I think this is the habit of Asians. Sorry to say, including myself. You know, when we ask questions, when we are telling our ideas, we feel that the other side needs to hear the background first. Why I ask this question, you know, as if they don't know, right?
Yeah, true.
So you know, in the academic life, don't do that, because just fire up your questions and then go right to the point. And then this is happening, right, in the academia, especially in Indonesia. So we need to, because when we are telling backgrounds for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then what is the question? I forgot what is the question, because we want to show people the background, and that is, I think, the habit that we need to avoid. All right, I think we still have 1 or 2 more questions, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. If anyone has questions. No? Okay. Lastly, I wrote opinion editor when I was a student because I didn't have money. So we write articles to get honorarium. No, Majello has question. In the past, in the print era, it was the more you write, the more money you get. The first-time writer will only get a very small amount of money, but as you become a frequent writer, there is a tariff. Right?
Sure.
So eventually, I got that rank. But now I don't bother to ask. I think Jakarta Post owes me a lot of money. I need to request a payment now. But I think Majolo, you could ask Pak Taufiq later.
No, please give me your detailed information, and then I'm going to pass that on to the opinion editor to have sort of process the payment for you. So I don't think he has that information yet.
All right.
Or if the opinion editor decided not to pay you, I will use my own money to pay you.
All right. I think Majello's piece is a good one.
Yeah.
And then I think that's what Pak Taufiq has been telling us about. Jakarta Post for Indonesia is we are trying to get international news to the Indonesians as well. And on the other hand, we want to get the news from Indonesia outside. So this group of students right now at the UEE, I think is the perfect source for writers to the Jakarta Post. They have a specific section called academia.
Academia as well.
And it is really intended for students, researchers, those who are working in think tanks. They have this special column that is intended to be filled by scholars or future scholars like all of us here, right? So if there's, yes,
please
use microphone, please.
A very minor question, like as you said that the Jakarta Post, it takes the news from the Western, what the Western has highlighted.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to ask why it takes what Western has highlighted, but not giving importance, or let's say not highlighting when you have, for example, when you have someone who can give what happened in a certain place because he or she was living in that particular place. So rather than just bringing what is the highlights of Western media about the world, why not the people who gives you stories from all around the world? So why not that?
No, because journalism is very expensive. If we want to have all our reporters on the ground all over the world, it's not affordable. It's unless you're New York Times, you cannot do that, because having local people there or having Indonesian people to stay there, it's very expensive, especially for a media company in Jakarta whose interest is mostly only Indonesia. I think Kompas used to have people in the Middle East or in the US, but I don't think they keep that anymore. So yeah, that's, I think, the problem with journalism today is that it's very expensive business, but at the same time, the money that we used to have in the past has been taken away by Google, Facebook, Twitter. So basically, all the ads money that used to go for publication like us is being taken over by Google. So we're still doing things like we were in the past, with only a fraction of money that we used to have in the past. So again, journalism is very expensive. To get to the truth is very expensive. So we have to make do with what we have right now. So because we cannot send people to Afghanistan, to Yemen now, and the only institution that is capable of sending people to Afghanistan, to Yemen now is the wire news services operated by France, by the US, and by the Brits. We have to use that service. Well, it's not ideal, but that's sort of the reality that we have right now.
All right. I think you didn't mean that you succumb to the news coming out from the Western media, but you are saying most of the sources come from Western media.
Yeah.
But that does not necessarily mean that whatever Jakarta Post published is only highlighting what has
Yeah.
been reported by the Western media.
Yeah, and-
I think
and
that's your point.
Yeah, and in the case of the Palestinian, the Israeli occupation of Palestinian, it's obvious that we only publish facts, but the interpretation of that facts will remains in our possession. We have been critical towards the Israeli government and the treatment of the Palestinian people. That's obvious.
Yeah, I think Jakarta Post in that particular case has been in line with the Indonesian government position since long time ago, that Indonesia treats it as the problem of not the problem of religion. That's one and foremost, and secondly, it's a problem of territorial occupation. And that has been consistent since the 50s, since our first president. All right. Okay. No more question? Okay.
Please.
One more.
Yes, I have just small question for this session. It's about what if I sent my article to several newspapers, and then the second question is, do we need like lead news to provoke the readers to read our article, right? I think it's different from the to catch up the question or give some like the transfer in a complex word to the clear explanation. I think it's different. Like lead berita in Indonesia. Yeah, yeah. That's I mean. Thank you. I was a journalist also, but in at the last.
Yeah, so lead in an article, but I think there's a difference between lead in the news and also opinion, because I think I mentioned earlier about the first sentence has to be the biggest idea that you want to put forward. So you have to put in the first big idea, major ideas on top first, and that's sort of, I think, the encapsulation of the whole article is in that one sentence. So I think this, in a way, this is the same with the lead in news, but with opinion article, the lead has to be your primary ideas or the sort of the conclusion or the biggest idea throughout the article, and you put it first in a very sort of interesting way to gather the attention from the readers. For instance, I think what I read is not really, it's not mostly great articles, but I still remember, I think in the last time I wrote something that, at least mattered to some of the readers is the proposal for the term extension of President Jokowi. And I started by saying that because the idea to propose the term extension was floated, I think during the same week the Ukrainian war happened. So on the same week, there's this major event in the world. Indonesian politicians make that proposal, meaning that even with the biggest news of the world that day, Indonesian politicians managed to top that. So I'm just trying to sort of juxtapose those two things that probably is unrelated, but by putting those two things in the same sentence, and this is in the first paragraph, I can grab the attention from readers immediately, because it shows that Indonesian politicians, they really don't care about any other things in the world other than their own interests. You have war in Ukraine, and then you have this proposal to extend the presidential term. This is just to show how egregiously power hungry they are. Although in retrospect, this may not be relevant or related. I just want to bring home the point that, okay, this is what politicians used to do. So yeah, again, you have to come up with something strong in the first paragraph of your article to grab the attention of the people, or in the news, we call this lead. but this is sort of the big idea first. Probably that will help answer your question. Oh, masih bisa, Bu? Can we one more question?
No, I mean,
Sure.
is it obvious?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. You can do that, but with the Jakarta Post, because we're the only one, so we have no competition. So you have to write in English and send it to us. With Kompas, you can do that with Tempo or Media Indonesia. You can send the same articles, and probably some of them will pick. But with the Jakarta Post, we're the only English daily, so you have to send it in English. Or you want to send also to the Straits Times in Singapore or the Inquirer in the Philippines, who also publish in English. But in Indonesia, you have to send it to us.
Yeah, because there's no confirmation. That because there are rejection confirmation that our article is rejected by the
Okay.
And then I think, is it okay also if I send to several newspapers that I have an article that you guys in Indonesian and English?
Yeah. We have a lot of senior writers doing that also. They write for Kompas and then they just send us the English version. So this is sort of the translated version of that. So yeah, of course you can, but I will tell the opinion editor to sort of always write a rejection letter for whatever article that doesn't come to be published.
Yeah, I think you need to send an email that you withdrew your article for that newspaper because you are going to send it to the other newspaper, just to be safe. Sometimes, these newspapers publish
The
same article, and ethically that's bad. Because then even you will be banned by those two newspapers. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I think it's been enlightening. I learned again a lot from Pak Taufiq as usual. And then I could also tell one more thing. If we can learn something from him, is that you cannot write if you do not read. And he's been an avid reader of everything, of political science, of music, of international relations, and so on. So that's why he could write good articles. So do not hope that you will be able to write good piece if you don't read. And that's, I think, because when you are writing, you are actually digesting from what you read, and then coming as your reflections on your reading, and that makes you able to analyze and to give your opinions on things because of the richness of your reading. If you read, you are kind of uploading knowledge to your brain, right? And when you are writing, it's kind of downloading, what you've read so far. Okay, thank you very much. Pak Taufiq, please give him a warm appreciation. See you again. And he's been very kind as well to our university. He ran the long interview with Pak Rector, when we were about to accept you last year, that he published about this university and continues to do so, I think, because we have same mission, Pak Taufiq. We will be the windows of Indonesia. We will get as many news about moderate Islam in Indonesia to the outside world. And at the same time, we want to bring more experience, lessons coming from other countries to Indonesia. So it's a similar mission. And I believe Jakarta Post and us can cooperate in many fronts. If you are interested in writing, send the article, send it to opinion@thejakartapost.com, right?
Yeah, or you can send it directly to me. My
All right.
email is Taufiq, T-A-U-I.
You'll get hundreds of articles.
So if you already have article, just send me. I will discuss that with the opinion editor. Because, as Pak Philip mentioned earlier, I think now
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay, I think we can adjourn. Have a good night. I'll see you in class. All right. This is a class, informal class. Thank you. Thank you, Pak Taufiq.